So I'm delighted to say joining us on the We Are West Ham podcast is Dom Betts, talkSPORT's Dom Betts, Fulhamish Podcast Dom Betts, formerly of Love Sport Radio, where this podcast, We Are West Ham, was born. Dom, great to see you again, mate. Thanks for giving up your time. As always, ahead of that game in the Premier League, West Ham v Fulham at Craven Cottage on Saturday. Fulham sitting very pretty indeed this season, 10th in the table, have been excellent since coming up from the Championship last term. A disappointing result for West Ham and for Fulham away at Bournemouth on Saturday, that 2-1 defeat. You got knocked out of the FA Cup at Old Trafford, just like we did in the round before. In the quarterfinals on the 19th, lost 3-0 at home to Arsenal before that, 3-2 away to local rivals Brentford before that. You haven't tasted a victory since your 2-0 FA Cup win over Leeds at the end of February. It's also been the 18th of Feb, the last time you won in the league. What's the feeling like at the Cottage among Fulham fans at the moment?
I think it's a bit of a weird one. I think if we were doing this preview at the beginning of February, or even just after that Leeds victory that you mentioned, everyone would be talking about, we're in the knockout in the latter stages of the FA Cup. We're looking like we could push for a Europa Conference League place. And in the last sort of few games, in the last sort of month or so, it sort of petered out a bit. But I mean, if you're talking to Fulham fans, we're pretty much, you're guaranteed to stay up pretty much. And the lowest you can really, I'd say, we're really going to finish is 11th. And I think most Fulham fans, if you're talking to them now, would say, well, as long as we finish above Chelsea, I think everyone will be absolutely delighted with the rest of the season. Obviously, it's slightly annoying, sort of how we were pushing for Europe for a time, and then we sort of petered out. But I think you've got to look at the season in context. Our first season back in the Premier League, we've punched our weight very much. I mean, we haven't tended to really get outclassed. Really, I think actually West Ham are the only team outside of the top four to beat Fulham by two or more goals this season. In a reverse fixture at London Stadium earlier on. So I think we've been delighted with the way it's gone, especially with how it's gone in recent Premier League campaigns. I mean, the last Premier League campaign Fulham fans probably enjoyed, I'd argue, was maybe 2011, 2012, maybe, because even 12-13, when we stayed up, we beat QPR, I remember, and then for the last sort of month of the season, we didn't win a game. So it's been about a decade, and I think it's time that it's taken a while, but Fulham fans seem actually united behind a manager. Previous managers, there's always been people for and against them. I go back to the end of Martin Yole's reign. I go back to Felix Magath, Scott Parker, Jokanovic, Ranieri. There's always been people for and against each manager. But I said under Marco Silva, it's been the first time where the club fan base has really been united behind a manager. And weirdly, the events that transpired at Old Trafford in the FA Cup, I think, sort of even got Fulham fans more behind the manager just because of the way it works. So I think Fulham fans can be delighted with the season so far. Yes, when you are in a certain position, it looks like you can push for that 7th position. It is slightly disappointing, but I can't complain. Quarterfinals of the FA Cup, looking like we could get a top half finish as long as we finish above Chelsea. So can't really complain about the season so far.
No, quality, mate. No, I totally understand that. Yeah, especially the Marco Silva thing. He's done an excellent job of refurbishing his reputation, hasn't he? There after, I think, the Everton gig, people just sort of wrote him off, and I think they realise now that the problems are probably at Everton rather than the person who's in the dugout there. But you mentioned the events at Old Trafford. That's sort of still rumbling on. You're still feeling the fallout of that. Alexander Mitrovic's red card, going spare at Graham Kavanagh. Marco Silva getting himself in trouble for telling Graham Kavanagh less than politely where to go, I understand. What's the... I think you said the hearing for Mitrovic's red card might have been today. He was facing, correct me if I'm wrong here, was he facing a 6-match ban for his comments?
So there's been sort of different people saying different things. I think people have been comparing different incidents with officials and contact with officials and what bans they've got, but there's been no sort of precedent set really. So we're still in sort of limbo where we don't know what's going to happen. I mean, there was a statement released by the club last week saying Mitrovic saying, I accept my 3-match ban, blah, 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 blah. But he hasn't had the hearing with the FA yet, who are going to decide. I don't know if they're going to completely throw the book at Fulham and say, we'll make an example here to show that you can't be doing this to referees. But then I looked on the weekend and saw in the Nottingham Forest Wolves game, which Chris Kavanagh was also refereeing, and there was Nottingham Forest players surrounding him, and I didn't see anything similar. So it's hard to tell, really. I think the loss of Mitrovic, it's a tough thing. But to be honest, since the return to the World Cup, I don't think he's looked fully fit. I think, his goal away at United was his first goal since early January. So it's not like he's been scoring him left, right, and centre this half of the season. So I think we can deal without him. It's just, if it's just 3 games, then fine. But I mean, actually, people have been talking about if it's actually a 10-game ban, which was rumoured when it first happened, that former referee saying he needs to get the book thrown at him. It would be quite funny because if he did get banned for 10 games, including the Bournemouth game just gone, his first game back would be the last game of the season against Manchester United at Old Trafford.
Yeah. It must have been, like we're saying, obviously no sort of hard and fast. We sort of know what Marco Silva said. He got himself in trouble as well, of course. It must have been quite bad what Mitrovic said to Kavanagh. Well, just explain to those listeners of the We Are West Ham podcast who didn't watch it, like what happened, what sparked it, or what was the event? Was it bad tackle? That sort of stuff.
Yeah, so we obviously United away in the quarterfinal left goal. We go 1-0 up. We're in full control of the game. Mitrovic getting the goal, and then in about the 70th or 65th minute, a ball comes across and Willian blocks it on the line. Originally nothing's given, and then it goes to VAR and it transpires that it's hit his hand, and obviously if it's blocking a goal, then in the new rules it is given as a penalty and as a straight red card.
Yeah.
But then
unless you're not in Forest, but yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And then as soon as the referee went to VAR, Marco Silva completely lost his head at Chris Kavanagh. And so then obviously he then gets a red card, penalty gets given. Then Mitrovic loses his head at the referee once he goes on the pitch to give it. And then he gets a red card. So we've lost our manager, our winger, our striker. Man United get a penalty, they're back in the game, and then they score 2 minutes later and it's 2-1 and it's pretty much game over when you're down to 9 men. But I think when looking at Marco Silva and Mitrovic's red card, I think it's not actually about the incident itself. I don't think it's not about the intricacies of that. I think it's about him going to VAR to give that, because they would argue, and I'd argue as well, we had pretty much a stonewall penalty in the first half, not even looked at by VAR. I'd understand if it was looked at VAR and not given, but they didn't even go to it. There's a corner that comes in, and Luke Shaw has his hands on Mitrovic, pushes him, and it means he can't get to the header. And then absolutely nothing is given there. And I think it's also just our history of Chris Kavanagh. I think Silva and Mitrovic, and especially Silva, feel hard done by from the reverse fixture against West Ham with the Dawson penalty against Andreas Pereira, the Scamacca and Antonio goals of handball. I think the Scamacca one sort of here and there, but I think the Antonio one was one that really riled them up. And then even last season in the Championship, we had a game away at Preston around this time last year, I think, and we drew 1-1. But the Preston goal was actually a double handball by Ched Evans. It hits one arm and then the other arm and goes in. So I think there was sort of just built up frustration with Chris Kavanagh's officiating against Fulham, as opposed to the actual decision by Willian itself, because it is a handball. You can maybe argue he's pushed into the position by Marcus Rashford, but yeah, I think it was just built up tension from previous incidents with Chris Kavanagh, and that's why they lost their heads. And obviously Silva was still on the touchline against Bournemouth because he was requested a hearing, so we'll find out this week what he's going to get. Mitrovic, obviously he put in a club statement last week that he accepts a 3-game ban, but as you said, he's got a hearing this week as well, so we'll see how much he's going to get if the FA are really going to throw the book at him, or if he's just going to get a normal 3-match ban. I think it will be extended. I'm expecting sort of a minimum 5 or 6 game ban, but we'll come to see. As I said, it would be quite fun if he does get to 10 and his first game back, his Old Trafford away from home last game of the season.
Is it fair to say then, Dom, aside from his goals, I was speaking to a Fulham supporting colleague of mine this week, that aside from the goals, which are obviously a hugely important part, a thing that Mitrovic brings to your game, that you are still a different team? You still don't play quite as well without him in the side?
Yeah, obviously we're never going to play as good without. We need to have a striker Mitrovic's caliber in the side. I think Carlos Vinicius, although he seems a tall sort of striker, his hold-up play is nothing like Mitrovic's. I don't think, and I don't think he can do it, because we saw it when we beat Brighton. That was probably actually our last win in the league, I imagine. When he got the assist for Manor Solomon's late sort of snatching winner, but he just isn't the same. I think his only league goal was the winner against Chelsea. But to be honest, if that's his only goal this season, I'm not really too bothered if it's a winner against Chelsea. But it's just not the same. The team doesn't sort of play the same. I wouldn't say Mitrovic is the player we'd actually missed the most when we were out. I think that's João Palhinha, which we saw when he was out for his 2-game suspension. I don't think we've won it. I think we've lost all 3 games he's missed this season. But yeah, just the attack isn't quite the same. Vinicius doesn't bring the players into play as much, but. Yeah, I think, and everyone have sort of mentioned Mitrovic's history, but to be honest, I think I don't think that's well researched because it's his first red card ever for Fulham. It's his first club red card, I think, since maybe 2016 or 2017. So he has sort of taken it out of his game. The only time he's really lost his head before for us was in the playoff final back in 2018 when we beat Aston Villa 1-0. I think Jack Grealish put in a poor challenge on Tom Cairney. But yeah, it was very out of character. And I think if you look at the footage, Mitrovic trying to talk to Kavanagh and Kavanagh said something back to him. And that's when he completely loses his head. So if we ever find out what happened there, then we might know. But yeah, it was disappointing just simply for the fact we were in such control of that game. We probably would have gone on to win and ended up being in the semi-finals and a day out at Wembley.
Yeah, fair enough, mate. Fair enough. Well, look, it was 3-1, the reverse fixture earlier in the season in October. Like you say, you had all the controversy with the Scamacca handball. I still felt that was a game we genuinely deserved to win. I remember, obviously, the fallout afterwards around the decisions was quite a lot. West Ham already felt they'd been tucked up a bit. Not too long before, away at Nottingham Forest, like I mentioned, when we definitely deserved to win that game. And yeah, I still feel we deserved to win, but I could understand where Fulham felt hard done by, particularly with that Scamacca goal where it appeared to like bounce up and hit his hand before going in. Looking ahead to the game this Saturday, then, Dom, style-wise, what do you expect from the game from obviously from Fulham primarily, but how do you expect the game to play out style-wise?
Well, we've pretty much stuck with the same system all season long. We haven't really veered from it in a 4-2-3-1. Obviously, as we've been talking about, it's different without Mitrovic. But yeah, we'll set up in, I presume, the standard team we usually have been playing. You didn't goal yet, but Leno, obviously, he's actually, I think he's been probably one of our better players this season. I think the stats of like the goals there should have been scored, but he saved. He's like the most overperforming goalkeeper in that area. I think he was. I thought he was poor for the Bournemouth win on the weekend, but overall this season he's been brilliant. Then the back four, you're looking at Kenny Tete at right back. Probably a centre-back partnership of Tim Ream, Issa Diop, and then Anthony Robinson at left-back. And then the real key to this team really is the midfield. You know, João Palhinha, he's got more tackles than anyone else in the league. I think he's got more tackles than anyone else in Europe's top 5 divisions, or top 5 leagues. He's got over 100 tackles this season. Yes, he's pretty much a walking yellow card. He was the first person to get the 5-match suspension. He was the first person to get the 10-match suspension. But I think you got to take that with his game. I think everyone talks about Casemiro, Partey, but I think João Palhinha's been right up there with the best holding midfielders in the league this season. Then in front of him, you have Harrison Reed. I think if you look at our goal against Bournemouth on the weekend, that typifies Harrison Reed's new position this season. A bit like kind of what you've seen with Granit Xhaka at Arsenal, that obviously he's used to be playing the 6 holding midfield position, but this season he's been allowed to play into a sort of a more creative box-to-box role, and Harrison Reed's been doing that. He's added goals to his game. Before this season, he hadn't even scored for us, and I think he's got 2 or 3 already this season. And then in front of him, you got Andreas Pereira, who we got to see from United, who obviously scored against West Ham in the reverse fixture when he slammed it straight into the top corner far post. And he's been great for us. I think, you know, Tom Cairney, obviously a club legend, club captain, you know, scored the winner for us at Wembley, but Pereira's really added a new level to creative players in our midfield.
Yeah.
Then out wide, you're probably looking at Willian or Manor Solomon, Bobby Decker, Dover Reed. And then up front I'd assume will be Carlos Vinicius, unless he decides to go with Bobby Reed up front and then try and get Willian and Manor Solomon both in the same team. But yeah, that's what you're looking at. And I think the key is just in most of our games really is the midfield battle. If you can get past João Palhinha and if you can get past the high press of the likes of Vinicius and Pereira, because when it was obviously not with when we haven't seen too much of Carlos Vinicius, but when it has been Mitrovic and Pereira, when they're pressing, it moves into more of a 4-4-2 as opposed to a 4-2-3-1 that Pereira will push up as well, closing down one man, and then the striker will look at trying to get to the man where the centre-back's going to pass the ball to. So I think it is really trying to, if you can beat that press and then get through the midfield, then I think that's really, really going to create the opportunity. So as I think really the midfield battle in this game really is going to be the deciding factor on which way it goes.
Yeah, fair enough, mate. Fair enough. Well, I suppose it's something to hold on to from West Ham fans' point of view, that there's no Mitrovic. But, yeah, we've got to hold on to anything we can at the moment. Whether or not we'd actually be able to put the ball in the net is a different question entirely, particularly after a game against Newcastle on Wednesday. Have you got a match between now and
no?
Monday
So we haven't got a game until we play you guys on the weekend. Okay. I believe a lot of the fixtures this one getting rearranged from some when the Queen passed away and things like that. So our one was against Chelsea, which we beat them. So that we played that, you know, back in sort of January, February time. So we're fine. We don't have a rearranged game, I think, until sort of end of April, beginning of May now. So yeah, we've got a 4 weeks recovery. Marco Silva will be getting into, and Morte will be getting into the boys ahead of that game. But I said we're in quite a weird situation now because I think the Conference League places with results on the weekend. I think the better quality of teams above us is probably too far now. So I think it is for them trying to motivate these players to putting everything into these games for the rest of the season. I think they will, especially after the poor result against Bournemouth. But yeah, so we are in this weird position now where I think they are still got things to fight for. Like we want to finish in the top 10. We don't want to have the season peter out and end up finishing sort of 11th place in the table. So, but yeah, I think that rest and us not playing this week and you guys having obviously all your games are massive now for the rest of the season, trying to provide keep your Premier League status. So, yeah, I think Fulham fans are hoping West Ham Newcastle is a very sort of tiring fixture midweek, and then we can take advantage on Saturday because our home record against the teams in the bottom half of the table has been very good this season. As I said, at home, the only teams we've lost to are teams above us in the table. So I think Fulham fans are very confident going into this game and they want to bounce back after sort of quite a few games in the league where we've been quite poor.
Yeah, go on and give us a score prediction then, Dom, before we let you go.
So going into this game against West Ham, I'm hoping, I wouldn't say I'm positive of getting it, but I'm hoping we can sort of edge a 2-1 win. I think the biggest thing for us is obviously West Ham have got everything to play for in this game, and Fulham have got trying to get back onto good form and a good performance in front of the fans. But yeah, I think it is going to be a very tough game. West Ham going to be right up for it. But I think if we can get our wide players on the ball, Willian being back is going to be key for us. So hopefully he can get a goal or two, and then maybe Manor Solomon will continue his goal scoring run of form from a month or so ago. But yeah, I'll go 2-1 Fulham.
Happy days, mate. Happy days. I fancy a 2-2. It's one of those places, Craven Cottage, where you always sort of go to thinking, we could get something here, but never really do. Like I watched us win at Fulham a very, very long time ago now, and it doesn't seem like we've done it loads since then. But yeah, we're not playing great at the moment. I think really, from my point of view, I don't fancy us to get anything against Newcastle at home on Wednesday. And I spoke to Jonesy on last week's podcast and said from the next 3 games we need 4 points, which I think is like an okay haul as far as staying up goes. We've got the 3 against Southampton. Basically, from my point of view, we need 1 point from our next 2. For it to be a reasonable haul from those 3, I don't fancy us getting anything at Newcastle, so I'm hoping we can get something with you guys sort of leaning on the fact that Mitrovic isn't going to be playing and that your Premier League form has been stuttering a little bit, albeit we had the international break. So I'm going to go for a 2. It sounds like, Dom, the bet is João Palhinha card anytime and over 2.5 goals in, if you're going to listen to me and you.
Yeah, João Palhinha yellow card, over 2.5 goals, and both teams to score. I think just get it on, mate. It looks like it's going to be an absolute banker. Yeah,
happy days. Well, listen, Dom, it's absolutely great having you on. We appreciate you giving us your time. Dom Betts there from talkSPORT and the Fulhamish Podcast.